Hey friend, welcome to Authentic Performance, the podcast. My name is Nat and I'm your host. At Authentic Performance, our mission is to provide education and advocacy for all athletes, developing awareness surrounding identity, purpose, and health, so athletes can live well beyond their sport. This episode is a special edition as we are honoring Suicide Awareness Month. I had a very difficult conversation with Mackenzie Dimond, a former teammate of mine, about losing someone to suicide and the importance of supporting athletes. This is an extremely sensitive subject, so I encourage you to listen with a friend or talk to someone about it after listening. We hope this conversation encourages you to talk about it more and become educated on how you can support others. If you or someone you know is in crisis, you can call or text 988 for support. You can also call 911 or go to the nearest emergency room. Neither one of us is a licensed mental health professional, but we hope sharing Mackenzie's story will encourage vulnerability and hard conversations surrounding mental health and suicide. We encourage you to seek professional help immediately if you or someone you know is in crisis. Please remember that you are loved and valued deeply. We're so glad you're here and hope this episode is valuable for you. All right, I'm so excited to have my dear friend Mackenzie Dimond on the podcast today. We're going to be talking about something a little harder today, so just prepare yourself. This is a conversation that is not easy, but very much needed, which is why I asked Ken's to come talk, because I know this is a really important thing to talk about. So, Ken's, before we kind of dive into it, I want to give you a chance to tell everyone a little bit about yourself, where you played basketball, and what kind of life looks like now.
I love talking about myself. Uh, well, let's see. I played 3 years of college basketball. I played my first 2 years with Nat until she went and broke her back. So then she left me. Remember that. Um, but then after that, I transferred to an NAIA school out in Missouri, and I played there for a year. And I enjoyed my time there. I ran into some difficult things, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. So, yeah, now my life looks like just finishing school, and then I'm planning on applying for law school. So hopefully, I'll get into that and one day make lots of money.
And just got married this summer.
Just got married. Wait, I
So
forgot to put my
sweet.
ring on. Let me show you my ring. Hang on. Here it is.
Yes,
Yay!
love it. We love it. Okay, so yeah, I mean, I loved my time with you. Obviously, that was a highlight, and now it's sweet to get to connect, even though we're far away. That
But
first year of college was we really had a tough COVID year together, so I think we're bonded for life.
yep, I'll give it that. College sports give you lifelong friends,
Yes,
no matter how much I want to get rid of you. Just
Thanks,
kidding.
guys.
I'm just kidding.
Okay, so now into the hard stuff. Can you share about your personal experience with the loss of your friend to suicide?
Okay, well, this obviously it's not easy to talk about. Um, so my third year of college basketball, I was playing at a school, and I was living off campus in a house that had me and one other student athlete in it. She ran cross country and track, and she was very fast, very very fast. I never went on runs with her because she was too fast for me. And towards the end of the year, things just got to be a little bit too much, and she ended up taking her own life. And I mean, I can't pretend to know what she felt like or what she was experiencing. Only thing I can speak on is, you know, my feelings and what I went through because of that. And I mean, obviously, I'm not there anymore. It was really, really hard. Um, that morning, I talked to her. Uh, I was on my way to class, and I said, I'll see you later. Have a good day. And that was the last time I ever spoke to her. And over and over and over, I think about how scared she must have been, how how much she wanted, probably just wanted somebody to just hold her hand. And I was just sitting in class completely oblivious to what was going on at home. And then, later I got a call from the school, and I was like, this is, really weird. And to have basically a complete stranger tell you that one of your closest friends is gone. It's a moment I'll never forget, and it's one that I relive frequently in my mind. And I there's a lot of things I could go into about the grief process, or you know what what could have happened to help her more, but all of that's kind of water under the bridge at this point. And to me, it's just hold the people that you love tight, because maybe you say I'll see you later, but you might not. And so you gotta be for the people, there for the people that you have when they're there. um, I don't know if that's what you want, Nat.
Yeah, no. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Again, I know it's not easy at all, um, but I'm so proud of you for sharing, um, and just being super vulnerable about what that experience is like, because unfortunately it happens to too many people, um, and it shouldn't happen to anybody. That's, I know that you've talked about how um, it's impacted you, but that it's also impacted so many other people. So, you know,
Yeah, like I can't, like, I'm not her mom. I wasn't even her closest friend there. I wasn't her teammate. I wasn't her coach. But when you lose someone like that, like, that stays with you. Like, even like I had other friends on campus who, maybe just had a class with her, or, said hi to her in the library once, and that shakes people. And so, like, first off, like, one thing is, like, if you've lost someone, like, it's okay. Like, even if you didn't know them super well, it's still okay to grieve. Like, no matter what your relationship was, like, you have the right to miss them. And then second, like, if you are considering that, like, I don't want to say like think of other people, but it really hurts other people. And I mean, you're not there to experience it anymore, which, I mean, it's probably what you want if you get to that point, but it really hurts. And, it led me down a very, very dark path for quite a while. And so I just, like, consider the people that love you.
yeah, and that's the thing too, is just knowing that people do love you. I mean, that's
Yeah.
no matter who you are, no matter what you're going through, um, you're loved and you're valued. I think it's important to really emphasize this, especially in athletic programs. Just that you're not alone, because there are so many things that you face, and I know we both had a lot of challenges and struggles in that first year, but one thing that I always felt really blessed to have was people like
Mhm.
um and some people just don't feel like they have that support, which is so sad to me. And I grew up with a really supportive family, and then like my college experience, even with my injury ending basketball for me and everything, like I just always felt so supported and loved. um But I know that could have been a very different experience if I didn't have that support and love. And so just understanding how important that is, especially for athletes, I think is crucial.
And um, like you have to give it. Like you can't receive the support and love if you don't give the support and love. And I think like that is one thing that I've learned from this situation is like, maybe I wasn't as forward with my support. Maybe I could have said, something a little bit more strongly or, done something a little bit differently. And, that's something that I've consciously changed in my relationships now is, when I say see you later or, hey, how's your day been? Like, I actually mean it. Like, I want to actually know those things. Like, don't just tell me it's fine. Like, like if I'm asking, I care. Um, and I think that that goes a long ways.
Yeah. I want to hear just your thoughts of why suicide awareness is important specifically for athletes. We'll talk a little bit more about like some of the specific challenges or pressures that college athletes face in general, but with that specific population, why do you think it's so important?
Well, first issue I think is suicide rates are on the rise. And that's not just with athletes, but across everything. And I think that that is a really, really big problem because nobody deserves to feel that alone. And nobody deserves to feel what it's like to lose someone like that. And so that's why I think just suicide awareness in general is so important. Um, but then specifically with athletics, like I know that my friend, she didn't feel supported by her coach or by her teammates. Um, and so she was kind of, left on an island by herself. And just like we were just talking, like you're not on an island, and more like athletes need to realize that because things get so hard when you're trying to figure out college, figure out being an adult, and or if you're on the end side of college, like what are you going to do afterwards? Like that's scary stuff. It's life-changing stuff. And you add that in like with the hard workouts and the pressures of performing, like it's overwhelming really fast. And if you don't know that you have that support, or I mean, to me, like after going through all of this, suicide just isn't an option. Like that, the situation has completely removed it from the table for me. And I know that's not the case for a lot of people, but, I think that that's what I would like want to say to people is like, this isn't an option for you. So don't even like think about that. Like, let's try to find other things that will help you. Like, let's work on other coping skills because this can't be your option. It hurts too much.
Yeah. No, that's so real, and it's so sad that so many people feel like that's their only option. Um so yeah, I think it's just so important for people to know that there's other ways to get out of the pain that they're in, because like you said, there are so many factors, especially in college athletics. I mean, we're seeing that the rate is rising all over, but I just see it being a serious problem with athletes specifically. And I don't know the numbers specifically. I think it's not really important. What's important is realizing that there are so many athletes that are struggling, and if they're even considering taking their own life, something needs to be done. Like, we cannot ignore all of the things that they're going through. And I know you have, because you've been a college athlete for 3 years. I was only in it for a little while, but there's just so many factors of, like you said, the performance, like wanting to impress your coaches, your teammates, your parents, feeling
Well,
all this pressure.
And also, I feel like athletes get, and I'd imagine it's worse for men. I don't know, but from my experience, like we're supposed to be the big, tough, macho, perform well all the time people. We're supposed to be able to lift the boxes, and even if it's not on the court or on the field or whatever sport you're doing, you're supposed to have it all together. And it's okay if you don't. And I think that that's one of the biggest things that I've come to realize. Like, it's okay. Like, I'm not encouraging you to miss practices. Don't miss practices. But if something happens and you need to miss a practice, it's going to be okay. Or if you need, like, if it's too much and you need help, like, communicate that with your coach, and they can get you the tutor or the advisor, or they can help you step back. Like, you are what is important. It's not the sport. At the end of the day, life goes on. Um, just make sure you're still here living.
Yeah, definitely. I know that you mentioned this to me. It's super important to be very sensitive around this topic, especially talking with people who have experienced it. So how can people be sensitive while also advocating for change? What does that look like?
I think one thing is, like, if you become aware of someone who has experienced that, and sometimes that can be a little tricky because, like, I don't go just broadcasting this around everywhere. um, but like, if you become aware of that, like, don't push it. Like, if they want to share with you, great. If they don't, then let them process however they need to process. I like to process things out loud. So I actually like it when people ask me questions, to an extent, though. The other day I was sitting in class and we were reading Romeo and Juliet, which is, suicide everywhere. Um, and I thought I was going to be fine going into class, but then as my professor was talking, I I had to leave. Like, I just couldn't sit there anymore. So if somebody, gets up to leave, check in on them, but don't push it. Or if I think basically what I'm trying to say is just let them know that you're there. And maybe if you don't know them super well, like, they don't want to cause a scene. They don't want to be the center of attention. Like, 9 times out of 10, like, they're not reacting because they want you to feel bad, or they want you to be like, oh, like, talk to me. They don't want that attention. So if they leave quietly, just let them leave quietly, send them a text later, or just don't call more attention to it when it's already a thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I do want to point out, I mean, I told you this before we started, but it takes a lot of courage for you to share. And so I'm very proud of you for, you know, sharing. And I know you've processed a lot, like and it's still fresh. It's not, and it doesn't mean it's gotten
Well,
easier or.
well, it's funny. To me, it's funny how grief works, because I can go, I don't think I go a day without thinking about it, but I could go a week, a month, and not cry, not have, the emotions attached to it. But then all of a sudden, I'll see something, or I'll just be sitting there and I'll think of a memory. And, and then it just feels as crushing as it did on the day that it happened. When things like this happen, like, people say it gets easier with time, everything's healed with time, and it's not. Time doesn't heal things. You just learn how to, process it over time. But then they can just creep up whenever.
Yeah. No, it I am proud of you for sharing because even through your grief, you've just used it for good and to support other people in the future so that this doesn't happen. So, like, volunteering with the helpline, being here and talking about the importance of, you know, being there for other people and being supportive, even just that, I know is not easy for you at all. I know nothing surrounding this is easy, but I am so proud of you for the courage to stand up and say, no, this hurt me and I don't want it to hurt others. Um,
Well, and I think like, thank you, but don't put me on too much of a pedestal because like this happens all the time. And my story isn't a special story. I'm not going to go out and change the world and stop all suicides. Like that's not what's going to happen. Um, so I think just if you're listening to this podcast, it could be you. Like I never in a million years thought that I would be in this situation. And so make sure you're not. That's all my wisdom.
okay, so now we're gonna just talk about in general, like some of the mental health stuff. I know like you have some experience with this specifically, but also just as a college athlete yourself, like you've gone through several years of a lot of pressure, stress, challenges. um, what are some of the things that you have faced as an athlete?
Well, I think transferring is pretty much as stressful as you can get, or just starting at a new school. Because there's so many unknowns, and how am I going to fit with the team? Are they going to like me? Is the coach going to like me? Am I going to be able to compete with the other athletes? Like, where's my place? I think 9 times out of 10, at least for me, I was always way more worried than what actually ended up happening. you know, um, the hard practices come, and your body is strong enough to get you through them. And the paperwork sucks, but you're gonna get through it. Like it, it's way more overwhelming than like you think it's more overwhelming than what it actually is. And I think the thing that has helped me the most is just break it up. Okay, today I'm going to accomplish this. Tomorrow I'm going to accomplish this, and stay on track, or else that becomes an issue in and of itself. um, but when possible, stay on track, map your things out, and then things won't be so overwhelming, and you'll be able to breathe and sleep at night. And you know what? If you miss a shot, or uh, I don't know what the other equivalent are for other sports, but if you never step on the court, it's okay. You're still playing, and you still get to be in that situation, where you're around a team, and you get to be involved in hopefully the sport that you love. If you don't love it, then I don't know what you're doing. Um, but I mean, now that I'm no longer playing basketball, like that is a tough pill to swallow. And I think that I took too much for granted when I was playing. Like, just enjoy the moment. Just enjoy the moment. Um, as far as mental health stuff goes, I mean, you can look up just lists and lists of coping skills online. I think one of the best ones, especially for athletes, is just sleep. Just go to sleep, because your body is so exhausted. Your mind is exhausted from school. Like, just sleep. And in the morning, things are probably going to look better. So that would be my number one coping skill for college athletes.
Yeah, I think I remember one that I can't remember who told me this, but like if you're someone who is super stressed about all the things you have to do, which I was often in that situation, before, like if you have practice, let's just say you have practice, before you go into practice, you take a little note card and you write down all the things that you are like stressed about that you need to get done that day. You put it in an envelope, put it in your locker, and leave it. Now they're not going anywhere, so you're not going to forget about it. You're not going to
Yep.
lose your to-do list that's in your head. Now it's down on paper, and now you just set it aside, do your thing, and then come back, because ultimately, like, your sport, in a lot of ways, can help you with your mental health. Like, yes, you've got all these, additional pressures and challenges that come with being an athlete, but a lot of times, if you really love your sport, going out and playing and just ignoring all of the things like playing time or how you're performing or whatever, like if you're just going out to enjoy yourself at a practice, a lot of times that's going to actually help your mental health rather than make things worse.
Oh yeah, one of the like most recommended coping skills is exercise. So like as an athlete, you have that opportunity. Just don't put so much pressure on yourself. Just enjoy it, I think is
Exactly.
the key right there.
Yep.
Um, and also like maybe, maybe you don't have time for this, but if, you know, let's say basketball is what's really stressing you out, hit the weight room or do something a little bit different. I actually like doing YouTube hit or Zumba workouts. That's what I did when I was like, it's just too much, but I don't really want to go play basketball because that's what's too much.
Yeah.
Just do something a little bit different.
And there's so many
Also,
sports.
you see my list, Nat? I'm still doing that.
Nice. Love it.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah, there's so many things that you can do. And honestly, like you don't have to have a counselor tell you to do these things. I think counselors are great and going to therapy is beneficial for lots of people.
Everyone.
Yes, yes, I
That's my
agree.
rant.
Um
Everyone.
but if you don't have access to that, just go online and like there's so many resources to find, like you said, coping skills or things you can do to reduce your stress.
Or like journal processing, like just go online, find those prompts, do them. Like there's a reason they're effective. Um, and I think most of the time, like one thing that my like crisis texting training taught me is like we're in like a hot moment, right? And we're trying to get to a cool moment. And most of the time, all it takes is you to just slow down and just think. So like that's why journaling is so effective, or coloring, or sleeping, because you just slow down and then you allow yourself to actually look at it logically. Because most of the times we get so caught up in those emotions that we can't think clearly. And I'm not saying like when you're in crisis, like you're thinking, like your thoughts are valid. Um, it's just it's not you, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. It can all become too much to where you don't consider, what like you can't think solution focused. Like you can't
Yeah.
think towards a solution. You only think of all of the things that are weighing on you, which again, like you said, is totally valid, but a lot of times when you step back or are able to kind of implement some of those processes, then you can realize that it will be okay and that there are things that you can do, and then you can find a solution, which I think that's one thing that I've read places, I've heard people say this. Again, I'm not an expert in any way, um, but in supporting someone, especially in crisis, the answer is not to try to fix things. It's not to say, oh no, you need to do this or you need to do that. It's not your time to give advice. It's your time to say, I'm here. Like, it's okay. I love you. I care about you, because that we so many people have this tendency, and even people in my life, I've not been in crisis like that, but even just in a stressful situation where I'm like processing all of these things and I'm like, this is so hard and I don't know what to do about this and this is stressing me out and this, sometimes people tend to just say, okay, let me try to fix it. And that's not the case often for people.
That's
That's
what
not what
you,
they need. They need to just be regulated so that then they can also think about what's next. Not, okay, let's go do this right now. Like that's going to only cause more stress and overwhelming feelings. Whereas if you're like, hey, just sit with me and let's breathe, like something like that is going to be way more effective, whether it be in crisis or just any kind of time of stress. Like that's something that I've had to do, even with my parents. Like as parents, often you want to fix things, right? And so when I first kind of started coming to my parents with like really stressful situations, they would say, okay, what can we do? What can we do? We want to help. What can we do? And we went through this, especially after my injury, because I would just have nights where I was just bawling and like, I don't know what to do. I don't know who I am. This is so overwhelming. And luckily, we were able to kind of work together to get to the point where they were like, we understand that you just need to rant. You just need to talk about all of the things that are so hard and so overwhelming. And we're just going to sit here and we're just going to be here. And we're just going to show you that we care and that we support you, but not that we have to fix it right now. Because again, if you can get to that point of cooling down and regulating, then often the solution's going to come and things are going to be a lot easier.
Well, and even if there's not a solution, like some situations there aren't, and sometimes you miss deadlines, and sometimes you screw up, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
Like your life doesn't have to be perfect.
No.
Even as a student athlete, like you're gonna miss shots, you're gonna not get the times you want, or whatever your sport is, like mess ups happen, and it's okay.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, most sports, the failure rate is higher than success rate. And that's
Yep.
real. That's the pros. Like I mean, even if you look at like baseball, I don't know the stats, but they're not hitting a home run the majority of the time. They're not even getting a hit the majority of the time. Like in a lot of situations, and that's the way it is. Like that's failure is normal. And honestly, I mean, I don't think we should even frame it as failure because I think ultimately it's more of a learning process anyways, but it's going to happen. Like your things are going to go wrong and what the important part is, figuring out how to go forward and move past it, not, dwelling on it and letting it take over because that's very easy to do, with all the stress.
And I think as, athletes, like you're pretty good at, picking yourself up by your bootstraps. Like you have to be an athlete. But like, realize like with your mental health, like you need to do that as well. Like it's not just the physical on the court stuff. Like you've got to take the time for your mental health as well.
Yeah, and I was just talking with someone about like your mental health should be just like your physical health in that like your coaches expect you to train physically to be good at your sport. If you want to have, a stable, like healthy balance for your mental health, it's just like another muscle that we have to work. Like you've got to develop these practices. And I think like all of the things that you've said too, of like journaling and just, taking these small, seemingly small steps, those are things that every single person can do. Therapy. Again, like that's not feasible for everyone. Most colleges have some sort of counseling on site, so you should have resources. But even if it's not, taking those steps before you get to the point of crisis, like do it now, no matter where you're at. Journal, see, get to build that muscle so that in the time of crisis, you are not lost and like have no idea where to start.
But even like if you are in the time of crisis, like you can still start
Oh,
now.
yeah,
Like it's
definitely.
actually more important that you start
Oh,
now.
yeah, definitely.
Um, so it's never too late and never give up on it.
Mhm.
Um, that would be my advice.
Yeah. Okay. I want to transition a little bit into just how we can support people better. What do you think it looks like specifically for coaches and support staff, whether that be like athletic trainers, academic counselors, whatever? How do you think they can check in with athletes in a meaningful way that can just show that they're supporting?
Well, we were just talking about listening. Like, I think that, I mean, that's the obvious answer, but listen in like a one-on-one capacity because if you're always checking in with your team in a big group setting, then that never gives the quiet voices a time to, say what they're really feeling. or even the loud voices sometimes don't want to say what's even truly on their mind in those situations. And then next thing is like, don't share it. If if an athlete comes to you with a concern, or especially like a mental health thing that they're struggling with, you better not share that, because that's gonna, like, if you share that, that's they're gonna find out, and then that's going to stress them out more, and that situation is just going to compound off of that. So like, be a locked vault, definitely. I also think, like, if an athlete comes to you with a concern and is like, I struggle with XYZ, then depending on what it is, depends on how much you can help them, obviously, but that doesn't change how much you can check in on them. So if they say like, I can't figure out X, I don't know what to do, but you can't help them with that, like, say like, I'm here to support you, and if you can think of anything, like, I'll help you. But then maybe it's just something they've got to do on their own, or something their family's doing. But check in on them. Be like, 2 days later, send them a text like, how's X going, or are you still handling X okay? Um, I know, like, that's one thing that I personally have struggled with, is like, I'll take a concern somewhere, and then it's like I never told anyone. Like, they just never bring it back up, and then I feel more isolated, like I have to do it alone. And like, logically, I know, like they said, like, I'll support you through that, but like, your actions speak louder than your words in that situation. Um, so make sure that you're checking in when something is brought to your attention. Make sure you're checking in. And then, like, as far as like suicide specific stuff, like, if you know that there's someone who is contemplating that, first off, encourage them to go see professional help. Like, you aren't trained to support them through that, and you shouldn't have to, because that's way too big of a responsibility for yourself. So encourage them to go. And if they won't, like, that's their own choice. But make sure, like, if possible, say, like, I will walk with you there. Like, be very supportive, very um, firm that they should do that. And then if it gets to the point where they are in crisis and they are ready to, take their own life, don't leave them. Sit with them, hold their hand, call for help, definitely, but don't leave them. Don't leave them alone, because 9 times out of 10, like, if you're there with them, then they feel at least a little supported, and they don't want to do it either.
Yeah.
Deep down, they don't want to.
Yeah.
So
What do you think the role of a teammate would be, just in general, supporting mental health? I know probably a little bit similar to the whole, coach and support staff, but what does that look like?
I think as a teammate, you have a little bit different of a role, because you're like, they're more apt to talk to you, and tell you like what actually is weighing on their mind. Like, if I'm having a problem with coach, I'm not necessarily going to go blow it up with coach. Maybe you should, but the teammate's going to know what's actually going on. And I feel like a teammate is way more likely to be in those situations where you don't leave, where they know that you are there and they can't get rid of you, type of thing. And those situations are really scary. They're very, very scary. And so, especially if you ever do go through a situation like that, or maybe even not to that extreme, that's, heavy emotion stuff happens. And even if there's like, you have a conversation with a teammate that is heavy, and even if nobody is in per se crisis, it's okay for you to respond to that situation strongly. Like, you can have those feelings and talk to someone about them, or process them in your journal, or even if let's say, you know Katie, your teammate, says this, like, you don't have to go to your coach and be like, hey, Katie's struggling with this or whatever, but you can be like, hey, like, I was talking to someone and they were they were telling me these things and I'm really scared. Like, make sure it's your feelings. Like, you shouldn't be blowing up other people's business with other people. And we're not here to spread rumors. But if you're struggling with that, then somebody needs to support you. Just because, you're struggling with it because of something they said doesn't mean that your feelings are less valid. So listen to yourself, listen to your feelings, and then seek the support you need for you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Now I want to talk on just a very general, like larger scale. Um, there's a lot of stigma with mental health in general and people reaching out for help. But like you said, I think there's a unique kind of stigma with athletes because there's a lot of expectations within the sporting area of being strong and not showing weakness and pushing through hard things. Um, so, what do you think are some things that we can do practically, just as people who want to support athletes better, to end that stigma? What can we do to make sure that people are not feeling like they can't reach out for help because they think it's not strong or that they, aren't being courageous or whatever, their thought may be? What can we do to end that?
I think that, well, there are a couple things. First, I think just be vulnerable. Like, people there's the stigmatism because people think it's not normal, but it is normal. Everybody has mental health, whether or not they want to take care of it. So if you're open and vulnerable about your own mental health, then that kind of paves the way for someone else to then open up. And if somebody's not ready to open up, like, we can't force them to do that. Um, but you've got to provide that safe space first. Um, Next is, the majority of mental health things are, at least in my experience, are confidential. So if people know, like, hey, me going to see this counselor isn't going to be spread everywhere. Like, everything I say, it's not going to go back to my coach. Like, knowing that that stays in that office can, I think, encourage more people to reach out for that help. And so, like, if you're a coach or someone who's looking to support athletes, like support staff or whatever, like, know that once that office door, like, is closed, like, things stay in that office. And I think that if you can build that sort of trust with your athletes, then that's gonna increase the number of athletes that are willing to open up to begin with. um, yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. Wear your ribbons, wear your suicide ribbons, and you know, talk about it. Don't be scared of it, because that, I think, is why there's this stigmatism of it. Is people are so scared to talk about it or to admit that they have had those thoughts or have had any sort of situation with it, and people get really, like we were talking earlier, like, be sensitive, but don't be scared, if that makes sense. Like,
Yeah.
talk about it, um, and recognize, like, people have extreme emotional reactions to this stuff, but that doesn't mean that it shouldn't be talked about.
Yeah. And you may not know what to say because, like, ultimately I will never understand exactly what you went through or anyone else that was involved in, your situation. I will not understand, and I'm not going to pretend to understand because that's the reality. I can, hear you and I can listen, but I won't know. And I think that's, again, like with the fixing thing, we often want to pretend like we understand people or that we know exactly what people are going through or know exactly what to say. And I think it's just important to realize that even if you don't know what to say, that might be a sign that we need to talk about it more. Like, if I don't know very much about, how to support someone going through crisis, maybe that means that I need to look into it more, because I think we all could be more equipped. And whether, again, like, I don't think I will understand what someone's going through exactly in crisis, but if I can be better equipped to just be a support system, whatever that looks like for that person in that moment. That could be a really valuable thing. Just having people that are willing to, have these conversations and learn more. Like the education piece, I think, is huge. And so I think that's also big, like you said, of just like being vulnerable, talking about it. That's what's going to equip people to do a better job of supporting others. Okay, we're going to wrap this up and end on a happy note, because that was a, heavy conversation, obviously much needed, but I want to know, just like I ask everyone else on this podcast, Kens, how does it look for you to live authentically?
Why the hard questions, Matt? Jeez. Um, Living authentically, I think, is it's not being scared. So not to bring up what we were just talking about, but don't be scared to talk about mental health, or scared to talk about the things that you've experienced, the things that keep you up at night, or just anything. Don't be scared on the court or the field. Like, take that shot. So what if it misses? Or, don't be scared to tell people, like, hey, what you said really hurt me. Or, hey, like, I would appreciate it if don't be scared to stand up for yourself. Don't be scared to be yourself. Because ultimately, like, at the end of the day, like, you have to live with you. And if you're constantly living in a state of fear of, they're not going to accept me if I say this, or I'm not going to make the team if I don't hit this time or make this shot, or, whatever. If you're constantly scared, then you're constantly holding yourself back. So don't be afraid.
So good. Well, thank you so much for being here. I know it's not easy talking about this, but I'm so grateful that you said yes. And I just know that this is going to be important for people to hear. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. We would love to hear what you found valuable in this episode. So please DM us on Instagram at Authentic Performance, or leave a review. They're super, super helpful for us. We're so thankful that you're on this journey with us and want to invite you to be a part of the Authentic Performance fam. You can check out more of how we're supporting athletes at theauthenticperformance.com. Also, let us know what you want to hear on the podcast next, or who you want to hear. We appreciate your feedback and want to give you the best possible resources and support. In the meantime, think about how you can live authentically. See you next time.